One thing that is really good with the Swatch palette is, of course, the Open Swatch library. And I'm going to go into an area called patterns, and then I'm going into maybe decorative. It really doesn't matter, or nature, animal skins. Uh, that's fine, whatever it is. Okay, so you can see that these are patterns that I'm going to click on, and they are going into my main swatch palette. So there they are in the swatch palette. Okay, I'm going to drag my animal skins into the swatch palette to the right, just because I feel like it. Even though when I open the file the next time, the nature animal skins palette will probably, this folder will disappear. One thing that's nice with patterns that you create or that Illustrator creates is that you can take the pattern and pull it onto your screen. Now you can actually see how Illustrator created the pattern. All right, it's all grouped. So if I take my group selection tool, I can click on sections and I can pull them out. So you can use Illustrator as an inspiration and a learning tool. I hit Command plus to magnify it, spacebar with my left hand, and a learning tool how to create things. Note that they will use the invisible box. That's a red stripe for my fill and stroke, which I have taught my class in creating these things, where they have to select this area here. This swatch here is representing the repeating pattern. So the left side and the right side do match symmetrically. I show how to do this also. One thing you might notice too is that when you click on, also I could right click and ungroup this thing if I want to make it a little simpler. I'm in the black arrow and I'm going to click on this, actually any of these objects. I'll pull it to the side, but now I'm going to use my white arrow plus tool, or the white arrow can work in a lot of cases. And I'm just clicking on one object, but you'll notice that a lot of times they create their patterns without a stroke. All right, but it's good to pull apart these patterns, really look at what they did. You can practice drawing over these patterns. You want a little bit of practice, but again, this area here represents the swatch that they created. So I teach this with creating patterns, but this that invisible box tool, you have to do create it in the object, arrange, send to back. This is arrange, send to back, right? So I cut through within the invisible box, red stripe for my fill and stroke to create the pattern. So, but anyway, so you can pull out any patterns you want. I pulled out another one so you can see how complicated these patterns can get. I'll just click with my white arrow plus tool. White arrow plus tool is a really great tool. You know, or maybe you want to change the current pattern. So I'm just selecting stuff with my white arrow plus tool, clicking on my swatch palette, and happily changing the patterns. But you can see again, there is a red stripe for the stroke. So in the more advanced drawing, that is what they do. So keep that in mind. So that is the power of the Open Swatch library. There's 4 main libraries that are really great. You got the brush library, the swatch library, the graphic library, and the symbol library. All right, and maybe I'll click on scientific analogous. I like science, and that looks really boring. So anyway, just experiment with the different library. Click on what you want if you want to add it into your swatch palette, and click OK. But it goes into your main swatch palette. Just keep that in mind. All right, so again, I switch back and forth with these icons here on my swatch palette just to see the different labels and stuff. So graphic artists or designers frequently will work this way, and I could always make my stuff medium thumbnail if that's what I want. Then I click on this icon, click on this icon. Okay, so that's more information about repeating patterns. So you can create your repeating patterns. I usually like it this way here. So you can create repeating patterns or use the library of repeating patterns. There's also a gradient here, so I'm clicking on the gradient, just having fun with that. Keep in mind, if I drag a gradient into the swatch palette like I'm trying to do now, it went. I'm going to create another gradient. I've never seen a gradient go into the swatch palette. Actually, I don't think that's true. I'm going to click on one of the ones that... so it's a brush palette with gradients. It does allow me to drag in gradients to the swatch palette. See what I'm saying? Here's my brush palette from an earlier class. Here's a gradient. If I try to drag that in, at this point, it doesn't work. So keep that in mind. So if you have a problem with the brush palette, that's the reason. Anyway, that is the swatch palette pattern library.